All right, welcome back to the garage, everyone, and happy eclipse viewing for those of you out there that are traveling to see the eclipse this weekend. I'm going to be traveling to Texas, hopefully getting a break in the clouds to see some of the highlights myself. Back to the garage, we've got a big job here planned for the CRF300LS today, a job that I've been admittedly a little nervous about because it involves taking a lot of stuff apart. But I do feel like I've kind of watched all the instructional videos that I can and read through a bunch of documents, and I feel like I've got a decent handle on it, and I'm confident enough that I think as long as we take things slow, we shouldn't have any issues. So what do we have planned? What we've got planned is this. So what I'm gonna do is hopefully, without issue, is replace the stock handlebars with these aftermarket ProTaper bars. Now you might notice already that I did go with the 7/8 size with the crossbar. I just like that style better. I know some of you prefer the fat bars. And I also went with the CR mid height. So they're pretty comparable to the stock bars, only a little bit higher. But this is sort of the compromise size and sweep that I wanted. Now, why am I doing this? Going to all this trouble to remove hand guards and all this nonsense. And it's a couple of different reasons. One, I want a stronger bar, and this is a stronger bar than the factory bar. But also the hand guards. I don't like the way the hand guards are mounted right now. They're kind of screwed into the bar end weights with a gauge of screw that is probably not sufficient. So one bad spill and I think they would just snap off. So I don't like how these are fitted right now, and I always plan to go back and do them later. The other reason is because, as I've talked about before, this bike has a twitchy throttle. And so what I did was I went out and I bought a Throttle Tamer tube, and this is gonna be my solution, at least my attempted solution, at mitigating that twitchiness in the throttle, as opposed to messing with the ECU right now. So that's really why I wanna do it. New handlebars, I want to adjust the hand guards. I also got new grips. I got some pillow grips here from ProTaper as well, which are supposed to be a little grippier and stickier. And so I'm going through the whole thing. New bars, new grips, new throttle. So that's the plan. I'm going to start disassembling things and we'll get into it. Let's go. All right, that came off pretty smoothly. I'm just gonna set this down, let it kind of hang. You can see, here's the throttle. Now able to slide smoothly. There we go. Okay, I just had to slide it because of the blinker switch there. You had to slide it down before popping it. So don't just try to pull it apart or you'll break off your directionals there. Okay. All right, I got it off without ruining the cable, which is good. If you look underneath here, see that hole right there? That is not in the new bar, and we need to figure out where to place that hole so that when we put the new bars together and we seal this back up, there's a little piece here that you can't really see. This little tiny button right there goes in that hole. So that's the trickiest part, and that's the part that I'm admittedly the most nervous about, is squaring up that hole and drilling it. We're gonna have to drill into the metal. So now these brackets have a little dot on the top, and that dot is up. So just keep that in mind when these go back on. All right, and there we go. Bars are off. Crazy. All right, so we've got the bars on here. We're just trying to get them in a position where I can kind of line them up, but they're definitely not centered right now. So I need to I need to tweak things a little bit and get them in the right place. But I had a little snafu there in that I dropped a washer down into the bike, so I had to kind of dig that out. All right, so based on what I'm looking at right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is spot on. I'm gonna just tighten that down for a second so I can show you what I'm looking at. You can see same distance on either side to the bracket there. So you got these 4 little squares and these 4 little squares. So that's as central as it's gonna get. I'm pretty sure within half a millimeter, but that looks pretty spot on. So now it's a question of rotation. So I'm gonna set up in the front here. I feel like they need to come back a smidge, just a smidge. All right, now if I stand up on these, that feels pretty good. And that feels pretty good as well. I'm gonna go right there. Right on. Word to your moms. Yep, I like it. I like it. I do. Now, these grips have different size openings. You might notice it's very subtle. This opening is a little bit smaller than this one. And that's because this one has to go over the throttle tube and this one has to go over the empty bar end. So just making sure I got that right. Oh yeah, it says right there, L and R. So there's an L and R on the grip. So this is left. So we're gonna put the dummy one on first. Before I put this on, I'm going to cut off the end and I'm gonna use a brand new razor blade so that it's very nice and clean. So I'm gonna take my time with this. Okay, so I got the end off and as you can see, I just cut the tip off and it's a little sloppy. So what I'm probably gonna do is get a little sandpaper on there and just get some of these little bits off. And that looks fantastic. Nice and smooth. Look at that, it looks beautiful. So what I've done is basically made it flush. There's a tiny little bit of offset there, but I like that. I like there being a little bit more sticking out. It doesn't really matter on this side, but just trying to keep things the same because on the other side it's also going to stick out a little bit. I've got about 15 minutes before this cures. Now, I will say these grips are a little bit shorter. It'll take a little getting used to, I'm sure. So there's a perfect little dot underneath here where I was able to cinch down. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna mark that. Okay, now we're gonna step it up to the size that we need, which is the 3/16. I don't think it's necessary to drill through the whole thing, so I'm gonna stop there. All right, moment of truth. There it is. How about that? Ha ha ha! Look at that, locked in place. I mean, I guess it wiggles a tiny bit, but I will take it. Yeah, so we're gonna have to play around with that a little bit and get that to where we want it. But for now, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I gotta say, I'm pretty stoked about that, man. I'm gonna look at my photographs really quick here. Damn, that looks spot on, man. And that's the left side. Pretty exciting, of course, without the handguard, but I'm gonna deal with handguards later. This is looking pretty good. Putting on this little sleeve here to keep from accruing friction. And it just goes on the front of the throttle tube. And so, you know, we're gonna be somewhere around there with a little bit left over sticking out the end here. So what we need to do is the same thing. We need to get this piece up here, wired in, and then with some tape put on it so that we can get an assessment of where we need to drill that hole. So I'm gonna set all that up and do it, and then come back to that. And cut. You may notice things look a little bit different. It's actually a few days later. I'm back from the Eclipse. I had some trouble with the videos that I recorded putting the handlebars on. Rather than try to go back and take things apart, I just thought what I would do is tell you where I'm at and specifically talk to some of the issues I had with putting these bars on, because I think that's the most important thing, especially for novices like myself. Trying to do a job like this can be a little bit daunting, and you are inevitably going to run into some problems. And so I'm gonna grab the camera here, show you what I've done, and talk about some of these problems. So let's zoom in here for a moment and show you what we got. So I did manage to get the bars on successfully. As you can see, I kept my Zeta handguards. I actually wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to reuse them because they didn't quite fit. Inevitably, you are going to run into this issue if you want to put this style of handguards on the ProTaper Mid CR bar. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's walk around here for a second. You guys can see. The bar is installed successfully. I do not have the pad on. I didn't want to put it on. I just feel like it's kind of obstructive. The handlebars went on okay. The grips went on okay. I had to drill holes. As you saw, I did drill this one perfectly on this side to the point where it was exactly at the end of the bar, perfectly, everything worked well, mounted correctly, all good. On the throttle side, I ran into some trouble. Even though I lined it up perfectly, I drilled the hole and the grip was past the end, which is bad, right? Because then it's gonna get stuck on the handguard. So I had to basically JB weld the hole. Thankfully, I didn't drill all the way through, and drill a secondary hole next to it, which worked perfectly. And it sits and it sits in there perfectly, it's gripped. And now, as you can see, when I push the grip all the way to the end, there's actually a little bit too much space, but it's fine. I'd rather have there be a little bit too much than not enough. Now, the next thing you might be noticing is all of this handguard nonsense at the end. Why don't I just have the handguard mounted right to the bar? So I decided to retain these Zeta mounting blocks here, which what that does is effectively moves the handguard out about 1 centimeter. And the problem that I was having, for those of you that are going to retain your stock levers, is that on this side, everything was fine. But on this side, the grip or the lever was hitting the bar of the handguard. So obviously there's ways to mitigate that. You can move the lever further inward, which then makes it kind of more of an awkward angle to reach. You can obviously replace the lever with shorter levers. But what I did was I just added this little bit of extra on the end with this guard. I also used a specific expansion bolt that has an extra little like 4 or 5 millimeters. So in total, this actually comes out about, I don't know, 12 or 13 millimeters or so. But what that did was then it effectively gave me enough space here with the handguard. I also set it up such that it's a little bit higher, and so the lever actually falls below where it would hit. So that was the first issue I had. Now with that all installed, everything is solid. These expanded in the handlebars correctly. Everything from that point was good. So you can see here on this side, very little space here. And so I had to sort of squeeze my phone mount, just barely into this open space here, and it just fit. I mean, we're talking just barely fit. On the other side, even tighter because you have the master cylinder up here, and so trying to get this GoPro mount on, I had to like mount it forward and then like tilt it back just to get it to sort of sit where I like it. And that's a little frustrating because on the stock bar you get a lot more, just it bends up sooner, and so you get a lot more straight available real estate here. Now obviously I could just remove the crossbar if I wanted to. You know, there's options, but that is something to consider if you're thinking about this bar, is there's not a lot of real estate to put various mounts on the handlebar. Everything looks to be okay. I've got a decent amount of play in the throttle right now, and I tested it both swings of the handlebars. All right, well, let's get this thing fired up and we'll see if it runs okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything just kind of feels normal. The handlebars don't feel significantly different. It's kind of preliminary to say whether or not the Throttle Tamer is making a very noticeable difference, but I do notice at least it's subtle. On acceleration, I don't get the jerkiness anymore. The throttle input has been tamed, I believe, on first impression. So that was primarily the main motivation for me to do all of this. I certainly could have just put the Throttle Tamer on the stock bars, but I figured if I was going to all the trouble to do that, I might as well just put stronger bars on, and that's exactly what I did. So I think pretty content. We are going to make some quick adjustments here, but I think overall we're going to be able to call this one a success, my friends.
All right, guys, well, I think that's gonna do it. I'm back home. I did tighten the throttle. I checked all the nuts and bolts. I tweaked my levers a little bit, and I got it to where I like it. Something I didn't show you all was that there is still decent clearance here between the end of the hand guards and my windshield. That was also something that was essentially rubbing until I added this extra spacer. So I think if you don't have the windshield, you have a little bit more room to work with here. So just a combination of things. That's all it is, and it just requires a little ingenuity. But otherwise, everything is working well, and I think we're gonna go with it for a while. We're gonna ride, see if we like it. Take care, everyone. Be safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.